Amen. Our Bible study today is on faith. And it has been said that there are parts of God that we can and do know because He has chosen to reveal Himself to us. But there are parts, a humongous part, that I may say, which we cannot know because we are not built for it. We are not able to. In essence, it's like there are things that we can see with our naked eye. And as we age, our eyes, glaucoma, cataracts, they get disabled even more. But we have what a microscope can see that our eyes cannot see, or what a telescope can see that we cannot see. So in essence, we are not built to know the unlimited God because we have limits. And that's where faith comes. And what we cannot see, we are sure of. It says here, the time has come, He said, Jesus said, the kingdom of God is near. Repent and believe the good news, which is what we believe about Christ. Hebrews has an even more precise definition of what faith is. It says, it's being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Okay, so it's not always precise to believe, right? We know certain things about God. We know a lot. We cannot know a lot of things about God. 1 Corinthians 13:12 says, now we see through a mirror, darkly, but then face to face. Now we know in part, but then we will know the whole. So it's a given. We cannot know everything. Now, what is the basis of our faith? The part that we do know and hold on to. Our basis is Christ, right? On Christ, the solid rock, I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. Now, we have faith in things other than God. In the sense that we believe, we expect it to happen. We know day will come after night. We just don't know when. Today, it was an hour earlier than we thought. Because man decided it was going to be an hour earlier. But the sun rose at the same time. We just didn't know it, right? And the times and seasons are determined by God. And we expect it to happen. Now, there are certain things that we believe will happen. But Christ is incorruptible, it lasts forever, it has lasted the test of time. And you know what? In the Old Testament, Job, I thought Job initially came after the patriarchs, Moses, Joshua, and into that. Because that's where it plays, after Joshua, Judges, before Psalms and Proverbs. But I happened to start a series of Bible readings that's based on chronological order. And it's to the best of their knowledge. We don't know for sure either. But they placed Job after the flood because there are certain things in Job that refer to it. But before Mount Sinai and Moses and the giving of the Ten Commandments, simply because they think, oh, it doesn't mention that. So it must have happened after the flood, but before the law. And Job, in that early time, said, when he was being tested, in Job 19:27, what did Job say? A classic example, Job is of patience. Everything he had materially, he lost. And his friends came to comfort him. And with friends like Job had, you don't need enemies. His friends were the worst enemy because one of their advice is, you're suffering all this. Why don't you just say, I'm sinful, die, and just let God, forget God, That's their advice. And so with friends like that, we don't need enemies. But what did Job say? In Job 19:27.
Myself, I will see him with my own eyes, and I and not another, how my heart yearns within me.
Thousands of years before Christ was even born, Job said, I know my Redeemer lives. In spite of all his sufferings, he had faith. He will never ever see the Christ. But he knew he was going to come. Then we have Joshua. Okay, I would hate to be Joshua. He came after Moses. Those were very big shoes to fill, right? Moses, the leader. Can you imagine leading 1 million, give or take, men and women and livestock trekking through the desert, the Red Sea, wilderness, 40 years? And the people were not exactly the best followers either. They were all whiners. But at any rate, Joshua and Caleb were the only two of the original generation who left Egypt, who survived to see the promised land. God zapped them all out because they did not believe. But Joshua, when they were going to enter the promised land with the people who were the new generation, said, choose ye this day whom you will serve before we go into the promised land. Okay, what did he say? Joshua 24:14-15.
Now I am about to walk the way of all the earth. You know with all my heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled. Not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened until the Lord your God has destroyed you from this good land he has given you.
24:14-15.
23 and 24. On the paper, it said 23. So it's Joshua 24.
Oh. No, 24, 14 to 15. You got that?
Okay. Now, fear the Lord and serve Him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living.
Okay.
As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord.
All right, Joshua said, choose. They lived many years in Egypt, and probably a lot of the Egyptian stuff rubbed off on them. Don't forget, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, believe in the afterlife. That's why we have the pyramids, the tombs of the pharaohs, and they give them the household goods so that they will have a happy life in the afterlife. Okay, along this line, you know Alex, right? Our son. Nice family man, minister of God. When he was growing up, he had his moments too. I believe he was sophomore or junior at Stuyve, and it was the time that the United States and Egypt had a historic relationship. President Nixon and Anwar Sadat, this is before your time, guys, had an agreement that they will be allies. And they celebrated by Egypt having a great exhibit of the pharaohs come to the United States and be displayed in 6 cities. King Tut, King Tutankhamun, with all the worldly goods, worth millions of dollars. Now, it was such a good exhibit of what the ancient Egyptians revered and believed that it was very popular, and they were selling tickets. Now, in his class, Alex claimed, the teacher said, if you want to get tickets for the show, I'll give you excused absence. So he did. He went to line up. You know where the Met is? 5th Avenue, 80 and 81st Street. The line went from there to Columbus Circle, 59th Street. And he lined up in the early hours of the morning. And when he came home, he was the proud bearer of 4 tickets to King Tut. And I said, what did you eat? Where did you go bathroom? You know, mommies have this very earthy questions. He said, oh, there were some people in line who had bread and cheese and wine. And my antenna went in. Wine? You know, I took the bread and cheese, but I didn't drink the wine. And where did you go potty? Oh, some of the coffee shops were opening their bathrooms. All right, King Tut, solid gold mask of King Tut. Can you imagine what that's worth? Did not have the sarcophagus, but it shows us what Joshua was saying. This people believe this. Throw away the false gods. And then when you get to the new land, you'll see other false gods, as we do today, right? We think science is everything. But every time, do you know how many elements there were in the chemical table when I went to school? I'm not going to tell you because I would be so embarrassed. There are so many chemical elements I never heard of that are now there. So we must not have faith in the old gods, which are false. Throw them away. Or the new gods that we have. Don't believe in them. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Okay. Now Peter we have to love Peter. He went from believing to betrayal and everything in between. But this is one of the high points of Peter. Christ said, other people, or people, his disciples said, people think you're John the Baptist or whatever, you know. And he turns to his disciples and says, but who do you say I am? Peter, the gem. All right, let's see what he said. Matthew 16, 15 to 16. Got that?
But what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God.
Yes. You are the Christ, the anointed one, the chosen one of God. That's what we base our faith on. If only Peter had held on to that and not wavered in the coming days, right? That was the pinnacle, the height of his faith in the Lord. He knew he was not who the others claimed. He was Christ. Now, Thomas. Thomas was one of the 12, right? But when Christ came back from the dead, he was not in the first meeting. Who knows what he was doing? But then, in a subsequent meeting, he was there. But before the Lord came, he said, just like our science, people who believe in science, I have to see it to believe it. So that's what he said. Unless I see the wounds on the side and I just can't believe. It's too hard to believe. And who can blame him? It is not a usual thing, right? And so let's read that verse. John 20, 26 to 29.
A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hands and put it on my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed."
Okay. Do you think Thomas actually touched him?
Probably.
Probably, if he needed to see, right?
If he's a doubter,
If he's a doubter, he would probably really
Want to
approach
see?
Jesus and
It's
touch.
not just see, also
No,
touch.
not just see. I think
Okay.
he'll touch.
Do you think so? Why did John not say it? He just left us to wonder whether he actually tested. There are some who think when Jesus told him that was all he needed. Who's to say at this point, right? But yes, Thomas the doubter. But he came to believe and believe with his own heart. And what did the Lord say? Blessed are you. You saw and believe. How about us? We are. Yes.
Jesus said, blessed are those who believe even without seeing. Who did not see, yet they believe. So they are not blessed, you know.
That includes us?
Yes, of course, because we have faith, we believe without seeing. That's in our heart.
There you go. And you know what? I thank the Lord that we are flawed human beings. So He gave us something to remember Him by, lest we forget. And you know, we have wedding rings to remember. We have birthdays, anniversaries to remember. We have the Lord's Supper as a renewal of remembering Him, knowing what He did for us, and renewing our commitment to Him, our faith. But I have a little story about the renewal. You know, it is a custom that some people, when they reach a milestone in their weddings, they would renew their vows. I know people who do it 25th or 50th. I don't think I did. We did. We never had the initial big thing, so never had the 50th big thing either. But there's a story about a minister who was a speaker in one of the wedding conferences. You know, how to make your marriage stronger, more faithful to Christ. And he was in a diner next to the church. And the lady who's serving, a little bit older than he was, said, "Oh, I hear you're the speaker in the conference next door." And he said, "Yes, I'm going to speak on marriage and renewal of vows as you age, you know." And the waiter said, "Oh yeah, that's good. We just renewed our 50th anniversary vows." "Oh, that's good. How did you feel?" the minister said. "Well, this time we knew what we were doing." Isn't that the truth? How many knew what they were doing when they were first married? We have the initial burst of love and passion and care for each other, right? But the renewal comes and he says, this time we knew what we were doing. All right, so much for that. Now, initial versus sustained faith. You know the story of Gideon in the Old Testament? Okay, Gideon was not exactly the strong man of faith that Job was. As a matter of fact, he started as a very scaredy cat. The age of Gideon, the Midianites had conquered the surrounding area, including what was then the young country of Israel. And so, the Midianites would see what they were harvesting and rob them of it, take it away from them. So there was Gideon threshing in a wine press. Do you know what a wine press is? There are archaeological findings of what a wine press was in the Old Testament. And what it is, it's below ground. They dig kind of like a big thing in the below ground level. There would be a section where they would put the harvested grapes. And then there is a flat surface where they would stomp, literally stomp on the grapes, crush it with their feet, and with gravity there would be a canal, a hole leading to a holding chamber where the grape juice would be to kind of sit and get fermented. That's a wine press. So it's below ground because of the need for gravity. Now, threshing and winnowing you would not do underground because you want the air to help you. You know, in the Philippines, we know that, right? The grains, when you harvest rice, you thresh, and either to separate the rice from the stalk, you try to do it where the wind would help you, in an open air, hopefully a hill. You know, giit, they call that. And then winnowing. What is winnowing? You take the bilao,
Separating.
separate the grain from the chaff, right? And you would do it on top of a hill. But if he went on top of the hill, the Midianites will see him. So he was hiding in the wine press. That's not very efficient. But he was, he wanted to keep what little harvest he had. So he was doing it in a wine press. Then what was with the dry and wet fleece thing? When God said you will lead the people against the Midianites. No, Lord, if you really mean it, and he asked the dry ground, wet fleece, and then that was not enough. Wet fleece, dry ground. Yeah. But do you think that was the only test you wanted to see if God was truly making him the leader? He gathered how many men? 32,000 men? And God said, ask them who is afraid. Do you know how many left? 22,000 left. He's left with 10,000. Is that enough to fight the Midianites? It said the Midianites were so plentiful, they were like sand on the shore. And he's going to fight them with 10,000, but God said, no, you must have faith in me. I have another test for you, God said. Lead the 10,000 men to a stream of water and make them drink. What was the test?
Those who lack.
See who would lap the water like dogs. That means take it in their hands and drink like a dog from their hands. Or who would bend down and drink from the stream. Why do you think that was the test? Guess? If you bend down, one commentator said, if you bend down and drink, you would not see if the enemy is coming. But if you get water and drink from there, you will still see around you. Guess how many got eliminated? Out of the 10,000, 300 were the only ones who drank from their hands. The rest, wow. So from 32,000, there's Gideon with 300. Now, it was not a great faith at the beginning. And you imagine what it was when God was telling him, you have to depend on me. Not by might, not by power, but by my strength, said the Lord. I don't want to be in Gideon's place. Okay, that is a story of faith. Now, what is another story of faith? Peter. Now, another chapter in Peter's life. There are many ups and downs in Peter's life. This was when Jesus walked on the water. What happened? According to the scripture in Matthew 14, which you will look on, two things had happened. John the Baptist, news about John the Baptist came. He was beheaded by Herod. Then another thing happened. Jesus fed 5,000 people. Men, not counting the women and children, because they didn't count women and children in those days. Sorry guys, that's the truth. But with how many? 5 loaves and 2 fishes, right? You would think Jesus was exhausted. And he was. This man he was to pray. And he told the disciples, get in the boat and go to the other side. That's in the late afternoon, early evening. He spent all night in prayer. Now, look at the chapter and see what happens afterwards. Jesus came in the 4th watch. What is the 4th watch? Oh, incidentally, Galilee. Where's Galilee? I have my little Bible map here, which is probably a little small for you guys to see, but you can look at it later. Israel is a sliver, and Galilee is a sea, the blue one up there. It's about 13 miles north to south, and roughly 8 miles in its widest form. Now, the apostles were fishermen before, right? So they knew Galilee. They knew where the fishing spots were. They knew when storms can come. They knew when it can quiet down. But what would take them roughly 2 hours, even if they went from the widest part of the Galilee, took them all night, and they were still in the middle. That's how bad the storm was. Seasoned fishermen couldn't navigate Galilee 2 miles, or 8 miles, sorry. and which would take only 2 hours. Now, in the fourth watch, what's the fourth watch? That's the Roman way of counting guards. 6 to 9 at night, first watch. 9 to 12, second watch. 12 to 3, third watch. 3 to 4. So if they started rowing late evening, early evening, late afternoon, they were rowing 6 to 8 hours already. Tired, exhausted, weary, in a place that they knew like the palm of their hands. Now, what did they see? Jesus walking on the water. And Peter said, if it's really the Lord, Lord, tell me to come to you. You have to believe Peter. He knew he could walk on water like the Lord, if only he had that sustained faith. He had initial faith. What did Jesus say? Come. And he did get out of the boat. Of the 12, he's the only one who got out. You got to give it to him. He had initial faith. And he stepped in the water. I don't know how many steps he took. It didn't tell us. Could you read the verse now? That section 14, 25 to 31. It's a little long. It didn't say how many. Does anybody have Matthew 14, 25 to 31?
And in the fourth watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God."
Okay. Now, he must have taken more than a few steps, because he was close enough for Jesus to hold his hand when he faltered. What made him doubt? The wind was scary. And they were terrified to begin with, right? Remember, big, stalwart, experienced fishermen were terrified. But out of his fear, he took a few steps, but he faltered. Aren't we like that sometimes? We have initial faith, but then, how does it come? In all circumstances. Remember the, whatever my faith thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. So whether it's, let's look at Psalm 62:8. When peace like a river attendeth my way, but when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my faith, it is well with my soul. Okay. 62, verse 8.
Trust in him in all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge.
In all times, good or bad. Now, the difference with the Israelites, when they crossed the Red Sea with Moses, and when they crossed the Jordan River, just when the promised land were inside with Joshua. In Exodus, it says what the people said when they faced the Red Sea. Okay, you're going to look up Exodus 14, 10 to 12. But let me tell you the background. Okay, million or so people with their livestock and everything left Egypt. They wandered around, and they're in the Red Sea. The sea in front of them, the mountain ranges around, the Egyptians with Pharaoh and his chariots and all his soldiers and men hot after them in pursuit. They were boxed in, literally. What did the people say? What? There's no graves in Egypt and you brought us here to kill us? They were like the whiniest of all the whiny. Okay, let's read Exodus 14, 10 to 12. Yes.
Pharaoh's approach, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert."
Okay. The Israelites were terrified, and they said, "Were there not enough graves in Egypt that you had to bring us here to kill us?" And they said, "Better that we are slaves back in Egypt than to die here." Now, is that such a lack of faith, Terribly. That's really the downhill part of the Israelites. Then after the 40 years and this generation of disbelieving people all passed away, except for Joshua and Caleb, they are now facing the promised land, led by Joshua. He asked them to choose, right? And this new generation, what happens? The tabernacle of God being carried by the priests were supposed to be in the lead as they crossed Jordan. And what happened? The moment the priests set foot on the Jordan, the waters upstream stopped flowing, and the people crossed. It didn't say they won. Let's look at Joshua 3, 14 to 17. Joshua 3, verses 14 to 17.
So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the Ark reached the Jordan, and their feet touched the water edge, the water from the upstream stopped flowing, piled up in a heap a great distance away in a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Sarepta, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Araba, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over the opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground.
Okay, the Jordan came from the mountains here, and they go down here. They were coming from the west to the east, because even though before Egypt was here, they wandered all over. And they were coming to cross Jordan into Israel, which was the promised land at the time. And it was the crest of the river. It was high. It was not walkable. But the moment the priests stepped on the river, the upstream coming from the mountains stopped and they crossed on dry land. And this time with the tabernacle, the Ark of Covenant leading them, the people went peacefully through the Jordan River. That's the difference between crossing the Red Sea without faith and crossing the Jordan with faith, that God will save them and give them the promised land. Now,
Sister Norma,
yes,
question. You know, they roamed for 40 years. So, I can understand people losing faith, because I think...
no, it was Red Sea was in the beginning.
Yeah, but I think the reason for that is because, was it Moses' disobedience? That's why they had to roam for 40 years. Was that the reason? I forgot what was the reason. And because Moses broke the 10 Commandments, right? That's why God's punishment is for them to roam for 40 years.
There were many instances of disbelief on their part.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
But incidentally, their clothes and their shoes never wore out. There's a verse there too that says it. We did a study once comparing the journey of the Israelites from slavery to the promised land and how it parallels our journey from sin to salvation. It was a very interesting study. We did it over a number of weeks. But it is interesting to see the manna from heaven, the water from the rock, the golden calf, the giving of the... And they went up and down. They never were a straight road to faith. Now, I see here, I said, very often we have an initial commitment. Now, we may have come to the Lord because we grew up in church and it was a pressure, peer pressure, who knows. Some become Christians as adults. And really, sometimes I envy those who do because I have seen the effect in a few of my friends who came to the Lord as adults. The initial commitment is strong and powerful. And it's not the willy-nilly, I think I will be baptized. But there are some who come with very strong commitment. But in our journey of faith, there comes times when we question or doubt. Do you know that doubt is not the opposite of faith? Doubting is not the opposite of faith. As long as you come to the Lord after you question and whatever, and you say, it is the Lord. And you know a good example is, I think I have it down, Psalm 13. It's a short psalm, and I think we should read it because it's good to show why when times of doubt, when you question, like if you lose a job and you have children and you say, how am I going to feed them now? You know that we did that? We bought a house, Angel lost his job, and a few months later I lost mine. So there we were with a humongous mortgage and 2 jobs lost. And we used to say, maybe Alex will eat on Monday, Milen on Tuesday, Jeline on Wednesday, me on Thursday and Friday, and hopefully on Sunday, somebody will invite us to church after church but we will all eat together. It was that bad, and you worry. And you say, where is God? I'm good. I'm trying to be good. But why is He not around when I need help? Psalm 13 is a very good example of that. Does anybody have Psalm 13? Read the whole. It's a few verses. Yes, Tess. Microphone.
How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts? Day after day, how sorrow in my heart. How long will my enemy triumph over me? How look on me and answer, Lord, my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I will overcome him. And my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for He has been good to me.
Isn't that marvelous? You start the first two verses. It's called the Psalm of Individual Lament. You are lamenting. You are saying, I'm just down in the dumps. I can't go any lower. How long, oh Lord, will I stay this way before you save me? And it goes on and on about my enemy is laughing in my face. I'm just in a terrible strait. But how does he end it? I trust in your unfailing love. If our complaint ends in saying, God, I trust you, I have faith in you, I will get out of this. You will get me out of it. That's the thing. It's like climbing a mountain. I have never climbed a mountain. Hill maybe, a little bump here and there. But you start out feeling great, right? We can do this. My water bottle is full. We can do this. And then the first mile goes on and the wilderness surrounds you and you say, tell me again, why am I doing this, right? So the doubt, the questioning comes and you know, I can do this, let's go. Somebody encourages you, you move on and you drink a little bit, you go, and then you fall back. It's not a straight ascent. Why do you think roads to mountains don't go directly up? Did you ever wonder? They go, the ascent is gradual because cars are not built to go this way. They have to go around that way. And if you ever go to Benguet and ride a crickety little bus where you look at the window and you see the cliff and you see the mountain on the other side, you know what it is, right? You don't climb directly up. So it's okay to question. As long as the end is, I trust in your unfailing love. If you are with me, we will get together with it. Okay. Now, the story of in the third section that we have, that was what the man who wanted his son cured. And he said, if you are able, please cure my son. Why was there a condition? If you are able, if you are going to believe, why is it? And Jesus said, do you believe? And he says, I do believe, Lord. Help me overcome my unbelief. He believed, but he knew it was not 100% belief. He was leaving a little sliver in there that Jesus could not do it, or may not want to do it, or whatever else. So he said, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. So if we feel our faith is not 100%, We have to ask His help to make it stronger, to make it grow. So that's why I said doubt is not the opposite of faith. Sometimes we question. But who else did? Okay, David did. How long? Right? Even the people who met Christ questioned Him. Let's look at John 6. Remember when He had that sermon about unless you eat my body and drink my blood? Some people who heard that took it literally and said, oh, this teaching is too hard. I don't think I can follow this. And there are some teachings we find too hard. I find love your enemies too hard for one, sorry. I find it easy to love others, but love your enemies, that's hard for me. Don't we feel like we must, eye for an eye, right? You're nasty to me, oh, I can be nasty right there. But you try to hold yourself. No, Christ said, love your enemies. But let's look at John 6, 2 verses, 60 and then 66. You have John chapter 6, verse 60 and then 66.
On hearing it, many of his disciples said, this is hard teaching, who can accept it? From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him.
All right, they turned away. You may doubt, but please, 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 capital letters, do not turn away like those others. So, why must we seek God? And therefore, the opposite is to seek God. If you don't see Him right away, seek Him. There are so many verses about seek the Lord. Seek the Lord while He may be found. What is the other one? And you will seek me and find me. If you seek me with all your heart. That's Jeremiah. But let's look at one more. Proverbs 8:17.
I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me.
That's fine. And then Hebrews 11:6.
And without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him.
Without faith, we cannot please God. We have to have faith. We do not see, but we believe. And in Acts 4:33, the Christian church, the early Christian church, how did they grow? Think 11 men plus one more. They became 12 after Matthias was selected after Judas. 12 men, and they're all over the world. They didn't have the internet. They did not have television, the media as we know it now. But this 12 men came and spread the word. Think about it. How did you come to know the Lord? How did it reach the Philippines? From the Middle East? The early church. Can you imagine how long it took to get there? Matthew 4, verse 33.
Here it is. When they heard this, they were furious and wanted to put them to death.
They continued. Yes.
Here.
Acts 4:3. Acts 4:3.
With a great power, they continue to testify.
Yeah.
Okay.
With great power, the apostles continued. That's Acts 4:33. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all.
So with God's grace, they were able to, yes. And finally, one advice is to wait on the Lord. Because God's time is not like our time. You know, one day, 1,000 years is like one day in the Lord. It's not according to our time. And the Psalm that I want us to look at, Psalm 46. This psalm was written in the midst of battle because there are many words in it that pertain to fighting. Fortress, enemy, so many words in there suggest that it is a psalm written in the middle of battle. So in a way, it's like ours, in the middle of turmoil. Do you know that this is the psalm that was used for Martin Luther's "A Mighty Fortress is Our God"? It's called a psalm of confidence and serenity amid turmoil. So let's read 46:10.
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
When we are in chaos and turmoil, sometimes we do our part, but we also need to let God do His part. We need to be still and wait on the Lord. Know that He is God. And with that, let's close with prayer.
When Jesus was praying, he said, my God, why have thou forsaken me? Is that a doubt on his part?
Is that a what?
A doubt on Jesus' part? Why have thou forsaken me?
Not sure. Which verse was that?
Mark 15:34. Mark 15:34.
What was the question?
He said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yes, that is what, that's not in this verse though. I will look for it.
No, I was just wondering whether that's a doubt or not on his part.
It could be. And it could also be that he was wanting to fulfill what was said in the scriptures. Because that is a direct quote from one of the Psalms. And if we will look at the Psalm, which I will try to find later, he is fulfilling the prophecy of what was in the Psalm. That God will forsake. He is a lamb brought to slaughter. So yes, it is. And that's why they said that he embodied the sin of all men. And with that, God looked at him and could see all the sin of men. Anything else? Okay. We shall close with prayer. Could you lead us, Sister?
Dear God, we are very thankful today that we could meet and study your word, Lord. We thank Sister Norma for sharing her gift of teaching, Lord. And as we continue our worship, may you open our hearts and mind to be able to listen and learn, and may everything we hear bring glory to you. And at the same time, may it may it touch our heart to use for the service, for your glory. And we also pray for Brother Saul at this time. We know that he's not feeling well. We ask you to heal him. All this we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.